The pollsters are at a loss for words after hearing how independents are reacting to this debate.
Now it is time to hear the most important voices ever. Those belong to the voters. All over the country, voters' voices. And in the front row, let's meet those who are in today. First of all, I want to welcome you, Janine. Janine, and I'm just going to kind of go through and we'll follow up with what your party is and who you're voting for and all of that. So, Ruben, you have joined us before, so welcome back. And we have Alexandria. Thank you for being here. Jay, welcome back. Good to. Oh, it's going to be spirited with Jay in the house and Ruben.
They got a nice
Amanda in the center. And David, welcome back. You and I have talked about a lot of things this year through the Israel war and so many things. So it's really good to have you back. First of all, I want to go around and just find out what each of you thought of the debate. So let's do that. Alexandria, I know you said that at one point you needed a break, like everybody else, just to get up. What was your take on it?
It was very long, and I think while there was some focus on policy, there was so much criticism of each of the candidates, and I don't think that we really got to the meat of the issues.
Okay. Ruben, what was your thought?
I feel the same way, except that the position there, the way Trump came out was pretty aggressive. I thought he was talking into a rally. He sounded angry. I thought so. And I think when he referenced those people was not the best thing to say.
All right. And, you know, Janine, I am curious maybe just to dig in a little bit deeper. Did it move the needle for you at all?
No, I 100% am a Trump supporter. And so I believe that he was able to articulate some of the messages that needed to be articulated. And he was able to go to his track record and to talk about the shortcomings that existed with the current administration. And I feel that Kamala just deflected the entire time.
All right. So before we go to the back row there, Lee Carter, polling expert and president and partner of Maslansky and Partners, is also here. So I know you're taking all this in as we jump in. Jay, I want to get your thoughts on last night.
I thought it was a better debate between two presidential candidates, much the same for Trump. I didn't feel like his entire performance was any different than any other. And I was happy to see the vice president come out. I think she could have made a few more points, but I think she did well overall.
Amanda.
I thought the vice president did an amazing job. I thought she had command of the stage. I thought she was a clear winner in the debate. She riled up the former President Trump, had him talking about things that are insignificant like rally size and using fear-mongering and divisive tactics, which were not helpful to him at all.
David.
Well, I think stylistically, Kamala did a nice job. She was well prepared. She was disciplined. Each segment, she got across exactly what she wanted to. I would differentiate the style from the substance. I think she parried away a lot of questions she had no interest in dealing with. And Trump wasn't disciplined enough to drill down on the specific points, the immigration issue, the economy issue.
We hit that hard.
He did, but I think in certain instances where she evaded the question, I thought he had more meat on the bone that he didn't get to.
Yeah. One in particular was whether or not she'd ever met Putin. She dodged that ball like third grade. I had not seen anything quite like that, and she did not answer the question. So I think it was right about that she had. Let's get right to it now. We are going to play clips from last night's debate. Lee has showed them to a group of voters who responded in real time using handheld dials. And you can watch their feelings second by second. And the red line represents Republicans, the blue Democrats, and the yellow independents. We'll begin with the issue that polls overwhelmingly show is voters' top concern, the economy. Let's watch together.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession.
It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy.
It goes to show that the Republicans and Democrats are going to feel their certain way about their particular candidate. However, whenever Kamala actually spoke, she was extremely polarizing to everybody else. In essence, when I hear her, it's more so anti-Trump, but whenever Trump speaks, he's actually pro-America. And a lot of independents can resonate with that because they just want the best for this country. They don't really care about petty name-calling. That just turns them off.
Line started to flatten and not dip so low down on that last one. He gets where people are.
He gets where people are in the economy. And that was a really interesting takeaway for me last night. I didn't expect to see independents tracking so much with Republicans last night, and they did. They wanted to hear the meat on the economy. They wanted to hear the plan. And while most of the voters that we spoke with agreed stylistically with Kamala, they said that she sort of performed better than he did on substance, on the issues on economy and immigration. They really resonated with him, and that was really what we were talking to a lot of the independent voters, and we saw that right there with that line.
So, Alexandria, you were formerly an independent. You're now a Republican. Can you speak to the issue why those two would track in your mind?
Absolutely. So I also just graduated college. I'm looking into the job market. I'm looking into the economy of housing prices, cost of food. And for me, at this point, it's not really about which candidate is the most poised or which candidate I like the most. It's about what the next 4 years will look like. And I do think that the economy under Trump was a lot stronger.
Ruben?
I agree with that, except that I do think that the strong points were the economy. He should have gone out and ran with it. He did not run with it. I thought it was more effective to do that. He should have done that. And no issues came up other than what they talked about, which is pretty overwhelmingly override. It was an override on everything. It was not even specific, and I think he should have gotten more specific.
Well, and the moderators could have gotten more specific.
Absolutely.
They could have done some re-asks,
too. It was three against one.
Yeah, from
Absolutely.
a journalism perspective, and having been on a stage recently with him and ABC News, basically running that as well at the Black Journalist Convention, I can tell you that this was not dissimilar to that. And so that follow-up, that need to kind of go deeper into humanize in those moments was not there last night. But that could just be a flavor thing. Who knows? David, I want to get your take on just where you saw those lines tracking. And I made the comment that when it got deeper into the economy, the Democrats stopped pitching so far low and kind of flattened out a little bit. Does Kamala Harris, to you, reach people right where they are on that issue?
Well, I think the irony is both candidates were fighting over the mantle of change, particularly over the economy. Kamala was presenting herself as the candidate of change, but of course, she's a reflection of the Biden-Harris administration, which the majority of the country disapproves of how they've handled the economy, and they prefer the Trump economy to this one. So I think it was difficult given that. But with that being said, Trump's strongest answer was the last one, where he said, look, you've proposed all these economics plans. Why haven't you done them since you've been in office for the last 3.5 years? You should have hit that harder earlier. And
one thing that bothered me about the debate is that Trump had the Trump card underneath his sleeve, and he just never fully implemented it. All he had to say is, you have experienced a Harris administration under Biden-Harris, and you have also experienced Trump-Pence. Under which administration was your life better in regards to economically, safety, and so many other metrics? Because this is a night and day difference.
Vice President Harris is facing a lot of criticism over not answering for changing many of her far-left policies. 40 minutes into the debate, the moderators finally asked her about that, and it's been headlines for weeks.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil.
Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one.
Why is she shaking
So
her
again,
head?
you saw
She
something
literally
similar
said
there
that.
where Republicans and independents are tracking together. And obviously that is per party, but independents supposedly don't have one that they've designated yet.
And one of the things that I heard from voters last night, I'd be really curious what you guys think, is that independent voters were looking for two things from Kamala. One, they wanted to hear more in depth on her policies. What was she really going to do for the economy? What was going to be different about the economy under her than it would have been under Biden? And number two, they wanted her to explain why she's had so many changes. She couldn't stick, they wouldn't let her get away. We talked about it before. They didn't want her to get away with this idea of values. And so she didn't give the why that allowed people to authentically say you have a reason to change. And I think that's why you saw the independents were really up there with Republicans, and Democrats obviously were not.
So, Jay, I want to ask you something similar to what I asked Alexandria on the second question. That was about the economy. This is about public safety, police, and military, so to speak. The blue line there for Democrats was going down, and then it kind of flattened out when he got to what life is like in urban cities or urban areas. What are your thoughts on that?
Life in urban areas are complicated due to a myriad of factors that are not present when we talk about rural areas. And so I think it's easy to make inferences that don't really make the same, that don't really have the same rationale when we talk about the differences between the two. But with that said, I think it's really comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same. We have different needs and different...
Okay, let me ask it a different way, because statistically speaking, we've been seeing this, and certainly among Black and Hispanic voters. What is the disconnect between Kamala Harris and some of the people who are in those areas, who are minorities and struggling economically? Maybe that's a better way to say it, because they're dealing with the bulk of the violent crime. The rest of the nation has seen crime come down, but violent crime in specific in those areas is up.
Well, violent crime can be traced to many different root causes, whether it be economic, socioeconomic struggles, whether it could be...
And most often it's that.
Yes.
Statistically speaking.
Education.
So why doesn't she connect?
That's an interesting question. I am not sure why she doesn't connect in those areas, because I inhabit many of those areas, and I think she is connecting well in those areas. I think she's doing a fantastic job. I think she can do better.
Is it name recognition? I don't know. Maybe I'm having some sort of an epiphany about that just personally that no one else is having. But when I look at those dials and that reaction, some of it is around whether you like Trump or not, you know what he stands for. And with her, you don't. And around the issue of crime, you know in those areas because you've lived in them.
I want to touch on this because they mentioned it in the debate once. Kamala was basically saying that Trump is a rich white man. He got millions of dollars from his father. But I would argue that Donald Trump resonates more with people in urban areas than Kamala ever could. The people that admire Trump most are the hardworking everyday Americans. Billionaires, corporate interest people, they do not resonate with Trump because he is a threat to everything that they hold dear. It's the everyday people, the construction workers, the police officers, the firefighters, and I would argue 90% of those people come out in droves for Donald Trump, and they would never do that for Kamala Harris.
One of the most powerful things that Vice President Harris did last night was her ending statement, where she said that she is going to lead from a place of, "Are you okay?" And that reminds me of civil rights icon Ruby Sales, who says, "Where does it hurt?" And when we can look at each other as human beings and as individuals and say, "Are you okay?" then we are going to be able to move collectively towards a country that works for all of us. There is no question in my mind that the Harris-Walz administration has the desire to build a country that works for all people.
Anybody want to rebut that or say anything additionally?
Sure, I would. I think that Kamala had a very polished performance last night, but she spent so much time on prep. I think Trump spent that time out there with people, out there learning about what we needed in this country.
Amen.
Interesting. All right, you guys are just wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. In the Harris administration, and the migrant crime, also a big issue, which he brought up many times, and it's a big issue for voters. Here is the former president on that.
Criminals off the street, and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
She is
Right,
so
you can't miss
smug.
it. I mean, at one point, those lines
Her
stopped
face-
going together,
oh.
and independents started going up a little bit higher than Republicans. I mean, they were right up. What is going on with independents? And we better pay a lot of attention to them.
We better. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting because in 2020, we didn't see this. We saw a big split between independents, Republicans, Democrats. It was like, you know, all different. It was like spaghetti lines. What we're seeing now is very much like we saw in 2016, which is independents are tracking very much with Republicans. They're looking for a couple things. They're looking for answers on immigration. They're looking for answers on the economy. They want to hear that things are going to get better for them. And they also want change from what's happening right now. And I think one of the most important things they were looking for last night from Kamala Harris is how are you going to make it different? One of Trump's most powerful statements that he said is when he said, you know, why haven't you done it for the last 3.5 years? You are Biden. And he was really trying to say, there's going to be no change with you. And people are looking for that. So you can see in these clips, and I was really, really surprised because the intensity of the independent support there for Donald Trump was very, very strong.
The thing is, independents are not becoming more Republican. It's just that the Democrats have gone so far left that even supporting them is almost treasonous at this point. Because many people would argue that some of these Democrats, the policies they put forward, it just seems like they want to destroy America and all that they are doing. And the thing that hits home the most with many of these voters is they've experienced the Kamala Harris administration. They don't want another one. We cannot physically afford 4 more years of this because prices are only going up, wages are staying the same or stagnating mostly. What's going to happen in another 4 years? This is a nightmare scenario, and we cannot have it come to fruition.
When you talk about immigration, I mean, that's a real big issue even in our community as Latinos. We look at it very negative. You're talking about developing a new, and I'm talking about the 50s and 60s, a new mentality of not independence, but dependency. Because now Medicaid goes up, Medicare goes up, all this stuff goes up, and they become, I was talking to some people who just recently in a family, and they're not looking to get out of where they are. They're not looking to do anything. They get a check, they do what they have to do, and the government is supporting them. And you're becoming victims, and that's the way I look at it. They're becoming dependent victims of a society here because they don't understand the rules here. They don't understand anything. So it's a whole learning curve for them, too, when you're talking about what laws you got to abide by. You know, you look at your drivers in the city. Think about it. I mean, nobody's really tuned into those things. Those are simple. Where are you getting insurance from if you're getting a license in New York and you're driving a wonderful car? Where are you getting that insurance from?
That's a great question.
So, God forbid, I get into an accident, I don't know where I'm going to go. And somebody hits my vehicle or hurts somebody in my car.
Wow. Janine.
I think the independents are tracking in a positive way with Trump's responses because it is obvious what's happening across the country in these cities. It is, you know, it's every single day we're seeing destruction. Every single day we're seeing crime. Every single day our safety is being compromised. And I think that you can't hide from that. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious. And something needs to change, and it needs to be done, I believe, Trump's way.
All right. You go to school in the city.
I do. And you don't have to look any further than the 5 boroughs to see the impact of the migrant crisis. I mean, our mayor, who is far from a Trump fan, said, I believe last year, the migrant crisis will destroy New York City. And this is Trump's hometown, and it's costing us billions of dollars of taxpayer funds annually. But I thought it was interesting when asked directly by the moderators, Kamala, the vice president, didn't even make an effort to defend the administration's immigration policies at all. She can't. It's indefensible. So she pivoted and she deflected, and I thought successfully. But they totally rewrote all of Trump's immigration policies year one, first 100 days. I would have liked to have seen an explanation for the country as to why they did that.
All right, let's talk about this. Democrats are pushing abortion as an election issue, as they have for the last few cycles. And here is a pretty feisty exchange after Kamala Harris falsely suggested that Donald Trump was opposed to IVF treatments. Let's watch.
I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth.
What really infuriated me about this debate is that every single time that Trump said something, these moderators came in with a fact check. Where were the fact checks for Kamala Harris? She was spewing lies about Donald Trump, and the moderators were just sitting back letting it happen. These people are supposed to be as neutral as possible. I mean, Trump said on many different occasions he wants IVF for everyone nationwide. He wants insurance to start covering it, and if not, the government will pay for it. So how she can have such blasphemous lie after lie after lie and just stand there with a straight face is sickening. The only reason she's doing so is just to distract the people from actually looking at her record. Because if both candidates were a blank slate and we were only voting based off of policy, I don't think Donald Trump would lose a single state in the Electoral College. But that won't happen because the Democrats have manipulated people into voting based off of their own emotions rather than voting with their brain and using logic and common sense. And that's what's wrong with politics nowadays. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. How do you think Trump fared in the debate? You think he won? You think he lost? And what percentage of RFK's votes do you think will end up voting for Donald Trump come November? Let me know. I'd love to hear that. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.